My name is Eleanor, and my story isn't one of grand adventures or heroic deeds, but a raw, deeply personal account of betrayal, heartbreak, and the ultimate reclaiming of my peace. It's a story about family, the people who are supposed to be your sanctuary, your foundation, becoming the very force that tries to dismantle everything you've built. From the earliest days I can remember, there was always a subtle yet undeniable imbalance in our family. My older brother, Michael, was the golden child. He was the one whose achievements were celebrated with fanfare, whose mistakes were excused with a gentle sigh, and whose needs always seemed to take precedence. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, diligent one, often overlooked, my successes met with a nod, my struggles met with a shrug. I learned early on that if I wanted anything, I had to earn it, fight for it, and never expect it to be handed to me. This early conditioning, though painful, unknowingly forged a resilience within me that would prove vital years later. My parents, bless their hearts, were not overtly malicious. They simply had a blind spot the size of a small planet when it came to Michael. He was charming, charismatic, and perpetually on the cusp of his next big thing, a series of ventures that always seemed to require significant seed money that somehow never quite blossomed into anything substantial. Each time, my parents would dip into their savings, convinced this was the one, and each time, Michael would promise to pay them back, a promise that predictably remained unfulfilled. I, meanwhile, worked my way through college, juggling 2 jobs to cover tuition and living expenses. I bought my first car with my own hard-earned money, and later, with years of meticulous saving and careful investment, I managed to purchase a modest but beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It was my sanctuary, a testament to my independence, a place I had poured my heart and soul into creating. My parents would visit, admire my garden, comment on my tasteful decor, and then, without fail, segue into a conversation about Michael's latest financial woes or how he was struggling to get by. The first tremor of the earthquake that would shatter my family occurred about 2 years ago. My parents, then in their late 60s, called a family meeting. I remember the tension in the air, the way my mother fidgeted with her hands, and my father's unusually stern expression. They announced they were selling their house, the house I grew up in, filled with decades of memories. My heart sank a little, but I understood. They were getting older, the house was big, and maybe they wanted to downsize, enjoy their retirement. I offered to help them look for smaller places, maybe even suggest some retirement communities. That's when the second shoe dropped, and it wasn't just a shoe, it was a lead weight. My father cleared his throat, his gaze fixed on some point beyond my shoulder. "We've decided," he began, his voice surprisingly firm, "to give Michael the proceeds from the sale of the house. He needs it more than we do right now. He's going to invest it in his new tech startup. It's a sure thing this time." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. $650,000. $650,000 from the sale of their primary asset, their family home, given entirely to my brother? Not a penny, not even a discussion about sharing it, about future plans for their own security, or even a modest sum for me. My mind reeled. It wasn't the money itself that stung so much, though the sheer magnitude of the favoritism was staggering. It was the complete disregard, the utter dismissal of my existence, my efforts, my own financial journey. It was the realization that, to them, I was simply not a priority, not even a consideration. I remember the ringing silence in the room, broken only by Michael's enthusiastic, if slightly strained, thanks. He already had visions of grandeur, talking about IPOs and venture capitalists. I looked at my parents, searching for some sign of hesitation, some flicker of awareness of the injustice they had just committed. There was none, only a serene, almost self-satisfied look, as if they had just performed the greatest act of parental devotion. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. "And where will you two live?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding strangely hollow. My mother smiled, a brittle, forced smile. "Oh, we'll figure something out. Michael said he'd help us find a place once his startup takes off." The irony was so thick I could taste it. They had just given him their entire life savings, entrusting their future to the very son who had consistently proven himself financially irresponsible, and now they were relying on him to find them a place to live? I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need some air," I mumbled, and walked out, leaving them to their deluded celebration. For weeks, I wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion, and a deep, aching sense of betrayal. I tried to talk to my parents, to express how their decision had made me feel. My father dismissed it as sibling jealousy, and my mother simply said, "Michael really needs this, Eleanor. You're so independent, you don't need our help." It was a backhanded compliment, a justification for their blatant favoritism, and it cut me to the core. I understood then that no amount of reasoning would penetrate their impenetrable shield of parental bias.
They eventually found a small, rented apartment, a stark contrast to the spacious home they had lived in for decades. Michael's startup, predictably, floundered. The $650,000 vanished into the ether of development costs and market research, leaving no trace of profit or even a viable product. My parents, now without their home and their savings, began to rely heavily on Michael's empty promises and, increasingly, on me. Their visits became more frequent, their requests more demanding. It started subtly, needing a ride to appointments, asking for help with groceries, small loans that were never repaid. Then it escalated. They'd show up unannounced, expecting a meal, sometimes even staying late into the evening, disrupting my routine. I tried to set boundaries, gently at first. "Mom, Dad, I have an early morning tomorrow. I need to get some sleep." Or, "I'm sorry, I have plans this weekend. I can't drive you." Each attempt was met with wounded looks, passive-aggressive comments about my selfishness, or comparisons to Michael, who was always so willing to help. The tension in my home became palpable. My sanctuary was slowly being eroded, replaced by a constant undercurrent of anxiety. I loved my parents, or at least, I loved the idea of them, the parents I wished I had. But the reality was, they were draining me, emotionally and financially, and their sense of entitlement was growing with each passing day. They seemed to believe that because they had given Michael so much, and because I was independent, I owed them a duty of care that superseded my own well-being. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday morning, a day that started like any other, but would end in a confrontation that irrevocably altered my relationship with my family. I had just finished my morning coffee, enjoying the quiet before my workday began, when I heard a persistent knocking at my front door. It wasn't the usual polite knock, it was forceful, insistent. My heart pounded as I peered through the peephole. It was my parents, and behind them, a U-Haul truck filled with their meager belongings. I opened the door, a knot of dread twisting in my stomach. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My mother beamed, a terrifyingly cheerful smile plastered across her face. "Eleanor, darling, we're moving in." My father stood beside her, looking slightly less enthusiastic, but nodding in agreement. "Michael's apartment complex just raised the rent, and he's having trouble with his landlord. He suggested we just come stay with you for a while. It makes perfect sense. You have so much space." My blood ran cold. So much space? My two-bedroom house was perfectly sized for me, and me alone. It was not a communal living space, especially not for two people who had just given away their life savings and now expected me to pick up the pieces. The audacity, the sheer unmitigated gall took my breath away. They hadn't asked, they hadn't discussed, They had simply decided, on Michael's suggestion, that my home was now their home. "No," I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. "No, you're not." The smiles vanished from their faces, replaced by expressions of shock and then indignation. "Eleanor, what are you talking about?" my mother gasped, as if I had just uttered blasphemy. "We're your parents. Where else are we supposed to go?" "You gave Michael $650,000, I retorted, my voice rising. "You sold your house. You made your choices. This is my home. I worked for this. I saved for this. It is not a fallback option because Michael's latest venture failed." My father stepped forward, his face darkening. "Don't you dare speak about your brother like that. He's trying his best, and we are your parents. You have a duty to us. This is family." "Duty?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "What about your duty to me? What about the years you ignored me, dismissed my efforts, and showered Michael with everything, including your entire retirement fund? You want to talk about duty? My duty is to protect my peace, my sanity, and my home from people who show such blatant disrespect." My mother started to cry, a theatrical display designed to elicit guilt. "How can you be so cruel, Eleanor, after everything we've done for you?" "Everything you've done for me?" I repeated, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and sorrow. "You taught me to be independent because you never helped me. You taught me to rely on myself because I knew I couldn't rely on you. This house, this life, I built it without your help, without your $650,000 handouts, and I will protect it." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You need to leave, now. If you don't, I will call the police." The threat hung in the air, potent and undeniable. My parents stared at me, their faces contorted in disbelief, as if they were seeing a stranger. Perhaps, in that moment, I was. The quiet, accommodating Eleanor was gone, replaced by a woman who had finally found her voice and her boundaries. My father, still fuming, finally took my mother's arm. "Fine, Eleanor, fine, but don't expect to hear from us again. You've made your choice." "I have," I said, my voice firm, though my heart was breaking. "And so have you." They turned, slowly, and began the agonizing process of unhitching the U-Haul. I watched them, tears blurring my vision, a strange mix of relief and profound sadness washing over me. This was it, the final, definitive cut, the end of a relationship that had always been unbalanced, always fraught with unspoken resentment. After they left, I closed and locked my door, leaning against it, my body shaking. The silence in the house was deafening, yet it was a different kind of silence now, a peaceful one. I had stood my ground. I had protected my home, but the emotional toll was immense. I spent the next few days in a fog, processing the raw grief of losing my parents, not to death, but to their own choices and their inability to see beyond their favored son. I knew I needed to take concrete steps to prevent any future attempts at invasion or manipulation. I consulted with a lawyer, explaining the situation. They advised me to send a certified letter, clearly stating that my parents were not welcome on my property without prior invitation, and that any attempt to trespass would result in legal action. I also changed my locks, installed a comprehensive security system with cameras, and informed my neighbors about the situation, asking them to be vigilant. The silence from my parents was absolute for a while. Then, a few weeks later, I received a barrage of texts and calls from Michael. He was furious. "How could you do this to Mom and Dad, Eleanor? They're devastated. They have nowhere to go. This is all your fault." His words, once capable of making me question myself, now just sounded hollow. I simply blocked his number. The emotional wounds took a long time to heal. There were days when I doubted myself, when the guilt gnawed at me. Was I too harsh? Should I have just let them stay? But then I would remember the U-Haul, the presumption, the years of favoritism, the $650,000 given freely while I struggled, and the resolve would return. I had done what I needed to do to survive, to protect the life I had built for myself. My home, once just a house, transformed into a fortress of my own making. It became a symbol of my strength, my independence, and my unwavering commitment to my own well-being. It was no longer just walls and a roof. It was the physical manifestation of my boundaries, a constant reminder that I would no longer allow anyone, not even my own family, to dictate my life or disrespect my space. Life slowly began to normalize. The anxiety that had been a constant companion began to recede. I rediscovered the joy of quiet evenings, of tending my garden without the fear of an unexpected knock, of making plans without having to factor in my parents' ever-growing demands. I rebuilt my social circle, leaning on friends who truly understood and supported me. I even started therapy, a crucial step in processing the complex trauma of family estrangement. I haven't spoken to my parents or Michael since that day. It's a profound sadness, a void where a family once was, but it's a void that is slowly being filled with peace, with self-respect, and with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I chose myself. The $650,000 may have been a symbol of their favoritism, a testament to their skewed priorities, but it ultimately became the catalyst for my own liberation. They gave my brother a fortune, and in doing so, they inadvertently gave me something far more valuable: my freedom, my boundaries, and my own unbreakable sense of self. And for that, I will forever be grateful, even amidst the lingering ache.